Hey everyone, welcome. It's going to be kind of weird because usually Jeremy's on here and I'm not just talking to myself. So it's going to be a little bit odd, but hopefully wine will help. So we're gonna do that. Um, Today we are going to be talking about Airbnb and incorporation. I know one of the very common questions I hear all the time from people just starting, and honestly, a question that I had myself when I was starting was, oh my god, I don't know how to incorporate. I don't have a corporation. How can I buy real estate like at the scale that I want to without corporation? Oh, it smells really freaking good. Um, Basically, what I wanted to talk to everyone about today, whoever is interested and has hit me up with questions and a few other things, was that you don't necessarily need to incorporate. You need to really figure out what's right for you and make sure that you're tailoring your strategy, tailoring everything appropriately. And how you make sure that you tailor that appropriately is by working with the professionals that you should rely on in your power team. So when it comes to incorporation, what that could possibly look like is your lawyer and your CPA. These are people that you need to be relying on, seeing if this is what's right for you, and that's pretty much it. Like, you can't know everything. You have to rely on people that are experts in the field. So that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. If you guys had any specific questions about that you haven't already sent me, feel free to drop them in the box. Hey Megan, how's it going? It's wine o'clock. Tonight's this night. I haven't actually tried it yet, so it smells really good. Nice looking cork. So I'm really excited to dig into this. Hey Jeremy. One of the funnier questions I got was, what's the best corporation name? And for anyone who knows me, I am not that kind of creative. I'm very creative at other types of things when it comes to maybe solving a problem through engineering or math or science or something like that. I can solve some types of problems like that. I'm very creative when it comes to that, but when it comes to naming things, like, talk to my friends before about like naming my kids, and like the first things that come to mind are just like numbers. I just name them 1, 2, and 3, and that's why I love the Audi naming method. All their sedans are A 1, 2, 3, 4, depending on the size, and all their SUVs are Q whatever 3 and Q5 or Q7, depending on the size. So, man, naming a corporation. I've heard people come up with some really creative, awesome names for this, but this is just not one of my areas of strength. So, numbered corp, that's potentially what's going to be happening. One of the questions that just popped up here: how do you and your partner set up the private money structure? So, I don't think this is necessarily an incorporation question, nor an Airbnb question, but it's a really good question. When it comes to setting up the private money structure, and they're clarifying, do you get added to the title or deed? It really, really depends on the people that you're working with. I'll remind you that is an agreement between two adults. It is an agreement that you can sort of make within the confines of the law, however the hell you want it. So it could be, I'm gonna loan, I can't pronounce your name, Asai. I'm gonna loan you $30,000, and you have to do my laundry every Friday. It could be something like that. I don't know. It could be something more complicated, where it's, I'm gonna loan you $300,000, and you have to pay it back at this time, at this rate, with this interest, and you're going to be on a first position mortgage or second position mortgage. It really, really depends on the deal. It really depends who you're working with, and the relationship that you have with them, and also like what each of you want out of the deal. So I don't know if that answered your question. Feel free to clarify if that didn't, but it's not as cut and dry as I think you maybe were hoping it was. It really comes down to building a relationship with your lender or building a relationship with your active partner and figuring out what their needs are and what they what you can provide to them in that case. So this has been sitting for a little bit. Carnivore 2017 Cabernet Sauvignon. If anyone else is drinking, let me know. All right, let's sort of get into it then. We'll start with the corporation because I think that's where a lot of people really seem to worry about or care about. Give me one sec. This smells really good. All right, it's bomb. He would want the land and 3 income-producing assets on it. All right, so that's something that maybe we can talk about back and forth in some messages back and forth, but we're going to move on to incorporation stuff now. So one of the first questions I got was why did I incorporate now? And the reason for that is because that's what was recommended to me by my professionals. And the professionals I'm referring to are my lawyer and my accountant. And basically based on my income right now, based on my goals, which are to keep growing and keep doing this, that's what makes sense. So what was recommended to me, and I'll just clarify again that I'm not a lawyer or a CPA, and you should talk to your lawyers or CPAs before making any decisions like this, just as a disclaimer. But what I've done and what is recommended for me is that I set up a 3-tiered corporation. And basically how this works is you have one corp that you hold, and that's your holding corp. And that corp in turn holds 2 other corporations. And one of those is a property management corporation, and the other one is a real estate corporation. So the real estate corporation holds all your real estate. What I mean by that is the lands. The lands are owned by that corporation, and it collects rent, it does whatever else, and then the property management corp is more on the active side. It runs the expenses, it does the property maintenance and whatever else you need it to do. That's how you set it up. And basically the reason for this is tax advantages, different write-offs and benefits, better tax structure in general. And that's a big step for me. And it's actually pretty easy to set up a corporation. You can do it online in a few minutes if you really wanted to. But based off of the direction I want to go, it's a little tiny bit more complicated. And that's fine. That's what the professionals are there for. So a few of the things that I have on the go that forced me to sort of pivot to this decision and this action is I have Airbnbs, I have rentals, and I want to buy an apartment building or apartment buildings or just larger multifamily units in general. In order to do this effectively, I need, well, not necessarily effectively, in order to do this in the most tax efficient way, I need corporations to be able to handle the active income in a little bit better way than I can handle the active income. And what I mean by that is how corporations are taxed on active income and how you as a person are taxed on active income are very different. And your marginal tax rate could be, let's just say 50% versus 15% 1.5 in a corporation. So these are just things to talk to your professionals about and try to figure out what works best for you. I will also say though that chances are you don't need a corporation, and I would definitely not recommend getting a corporation just for the fun of it, because the fees, that was the next question, the fees and the cost of incorporating, it gets expensive. You could spend thousands of dollars on your corporate structure. In my case, it's about $5,000 to $6,000, somewhere in that range. I'm not 100% sure. You also file extra fees when filing taxes, these are other things to think about. These are not, it's not just something that you just do on a whim and sort of forget that you have the corp, because it'll cost you money, and it's not money you necessarily need to spend. So don't spend that money if you don't need to, because all your tax savings are going to be kind of useless then. Hey Ken. Mohammed, yes, I am an engineer. Someone else asked like how many properties before incorporating, and I would say like literally as many as possible before your CPA tells you you need to incorporate. If you can buy 1 million properties before your CPA says, hey, maybe this is necessary because your active income isn't actually that high, don't do it. Like, listen to them. That's not a question for me. That's a question for your CPA, your goals, and try to figure out that. One of the other questions on this was the tax implications and benefits, and I sort of briefly mentioned that. It's basically that when your active income comes to you as a person, you just get taxed on that income at your marginal tax rate. So if you're making 100 grand or whatever in active income off of your flips, off of your Airbnb, off of your wholesaling, off of your whatever, if you're making 100 grand in active income off of that, what that looks like is marginal tax rate income. So not necessarily ideal. Versus within the holding corp, or sorry, within the property management corp or real estate corp, they're taxed totally differently. So ask about those things to your professionals, and they'll guide you appropriately. Maybe a one corporate structure is all you need, rather than a 3-tiered corporate structure. That's just for you to find out after digging in and asking very specific questions after doing some research to your professionals. And remember also that Googling things is going to really help you out here, because if you just ask them stupid questions, and there are such things as stupid questions, you will waste their time and they will charge you for it. Do not do that. Do some research, find out what questions you need to ask to get the targeted results that you need. Ask those questions, and then ask deeper and better questions every single time. Does anyone else, before we move on, have anything else specifically about incorporation here? I'll give you a couple seconds. So actually, Ishan just commented. I met Ishan for the first time yesterday or the day before, and it was really, really great. We've been talking back and forth for quite a while now on Instagram, but yesterday was the first time we met, so it was really nice. Nice to meet you, man. All right, we're trucking along here. The next thing that I wanted to talk about tonight is Airbnb. Airbnb has gotten kind of a bad rap over the last several months with COVID. Initially, I was panicking because the hotels were shutting down. Everything was just going to shit. It was just not, the future was not looking good. At that point, I also had a couple of re-rentals. And what that basically means, some people might call it Airbnb arbitrage. But basically, I was the tenant. I was the tenant in that house or unit or whatever. And I paid the landlord whatever rent. And then I ran that unit as an Airbnb. And this is actually a really, really interesting strategy. I really like it. Because basically you're creating a win-win for the landlord that might not have been able to get market rent, or might not have been able to get it rented in general, because maybe the unit doesn't meet all the legal requirements of the Ontario Building Code. But since you're not renting it out through the Landlord-Tenant Act and as a long-term rental, you can rent it out as an Airbnb. Now, that might change, especially here in London, Ontario, where they're starting to implement more stricter rental license things that might impact Airbnb. But for now, what you can do is rent those units out on Airbnb, even though they might not meet the requirements for the long-term rentals. So I really like that strategy, because you can go up to a landlord and maybe on Kijiji or Facebook or whatever, and say, hey, I can pay you that rent but I want, like, don't lie. Have full disclosure. I want to use this as an Airbnb. They're gonna be like, well, why should I do it? Like, give that to you. I can just do it as an Airbnb. And it's, okay, do it then. Like, this is what I'd recommend, and I give them a list of recommendations, and then they're like, oh shit, that actually sounds like a lot of work. Okay, you can do it. And then I do it. And what it looks like is getting in all this cleaning supplies, furnishing the place, getting the cleaner set up, getting the automatic door lock set up, getting good Wi-Fi, etc., etc. Like, you need all these things in place, but then they get market rent, or maybe they negotiate slightly higher than whatever market rent if they furnish it or something like that. Again, you can set your deal however you want and organize it however you want, and then you pay them that rent on a lease every month, regardless of your income. Remember, that's the risk that you're taking on. However, the upside of that is that when you get your 1,000, 2,000, whatever profit, that's huge. So that's what I was doing for a little bit. I was running Airbnb re-rentals, and it was working great. But the owner of the property that I was operating out of wanted to sell the property because he just panicked when COVID stuff hit. So I had to cancel like a bunch of guests. I had to sort of get all my stuff out of there really quickly. It was just extremely frustrating, and I don't have a relationship with that person anymore as a result of it. It was not ideal to panic like that, and that was like one of the things that really worried me, is like, what if this keeps happening? So how I pivoted, I immediately remarketed all of my Airbnbs as like self-isolation, 14-day self-quarantine type of things. That worked out absolutely perfectly, because at that time the government of Canada was calling back pretty much everyone to Canada. Said, hey, if you're abroad, come back home, come back right now. And all the snowbirds that were abroad, they came back and booked all my Airbnbs for 14-day intervals, essentially. My vacancy ended up plummeting down to zero, basically. I had no vacancy. My cleaning fees dropped dramatically, because instead of 2 or 3 day stays, I had 14-day stays. My income ended up being about the same for a little bit. I've had to drop the nightly rate since, but as more people like flooded the market with their Airbnbs or lower prices. But like overall, it ended up being absolutely wonderful for the business. But a lot of people had to shut down their Airbnbs because they didn't pivot their business. So the pivot is the main thing that I wanted you guys to take away from this, mainly, is how can you change your business with changing times? How can you adapt to whatever situations are coming your way? Are you going to panic and sell? Are you going to pivot and profit? That is the only choices, right? Are you going to fail or are you going to win? In this case, with the Airbnbs as it is now, my nightly rate has dropped. My nightly rate normally, before COVID, at like the peak of traveling, everything like that, was about $120 a night. And now, that was with about an 85% vacancy, occupancy. So about 20 to 25% vacancy at the max. I'm doing that backwards. At 15 to 20% vacancy at the max. And now my nightly rate has dropped to about $80, about $87, somewhere in that range. I'm not yet dialed in per night. However, my occupancy is near 100%. I have like no vacancy. So it's about the same amount of income, and I'm okay with that. It's much less everything. It's just less worry in general. So I really like how it worked out. And I talk about this pretty much every episode Jeremy and I do in like chaos theory. It's one of my favorite things that I notice about human behavior. And basically what it states is that when we're forced to adapt, sometimes we just find a better way to do things, and we never go back to the original way. And where this comes from is a study that looked at all these traffic and construction things, and they looked at all the commuters that now have to go out of their way to find a different way to work. And a lot of people, I can't remember the exact number, but a lot of people never went back to the original way that they went to work. They found this new way that was faster or nicer or whatever. I don't know. But sometimes it just takes that push to change, right? So I really like that because it's applicable in so many different aspects of life. Where one of my other favorite quotes is, one thing that holds a lot of people back from a great life is a good life. And sometimes it just takes that push, or hitting rock bottom, or whatever. Something changes your path, and sometimes you have to create that for yourself. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to talk about. So now we've talked about COVID and Airbnb and a little bit of a pivot in strategy to make sure that Airbnb has been successful basically throughout all this. Ishan just mentioned, I pivoted my student rental to single working professionals. Love the strategy. Amazing. So again, a quick pivot that perfectly fits the market that is needed. I know Jeremy and Taylor, they have a small Airbnb in their backyard. Basically, it's another separate house. They call it the Little House, and that was an Airbnb that they were running for a while, and then they basically turned that into a long-term rental because their person just wanted to stay. So what that means for them is no more Airbnb fees, granted marginal 3%, no more cleaning fees, and they just forget about it. The person is amazing. They stay there and they just pay the rent, and they're getting the same money that they were before, but now it's turned into a passive income stream rather than an active income stream. So keep looking for ways to change what you're doing in order to make it a little bit better, and it's exhausting sometimes. Just on I guess a more personal side, I've been working very long hours recently, 21 hours roughly per day, and it's been exhausting. I can't do that for much longer than a week to 2 weeks before my body just decides you're not doing anything else today. But yeah, last night I slept for 11 hours and it was absolutely wonderful. So I'm back in action, got some great wine, and yeah, good to go. Ishan just asked about Airbnb here. Do you outsource your cleaning for Airbnb because there would be days when you are at work, and how do you delegate it? That's a wonderful question, and I think you may know the answer to this. So I work a lot. I don't have time to clean, and I did all the cleaning, all the laundry, everything at the start. That lasted about 1 week, maybe 2, when I first started my Airbnb. So for those of you that don't know, how I started my Airbnb is after I went to OREC 2019. That's when my whole life in real estate basically started. I just basically walked around upstairs. I'm in my basement unit right now. This is a secondary dwelling in my primary residence. I walked around upstairs and I was like, oh my god, I'm wasting all this space. I don't even need 2 bedrooms. I just live alone, whatever. And I took all my clothes and I just moved downstairs, and then I posted my upstairs unit on Airbnb that night, essentially. And yeah, Thursday night I had Tuesday night I had my first booking for Friday night move-in, and yeah, it was scary, but I just went for it, and I didn't even have the sheets or the towels or the soaps or any of the random other bullshit that you need for Airbnb, but I just did it and it worked out. But I didn't have any of my systems set up. I didn't have any of the structure, the cleaners, anything, so I just did it all, and it was exhausting. So I immediately found cleaners to come in. I set them up with their own door codes. I got automatic door code locks. I also set them up with my calendar on Airbnb, so that was automatic. As soon as the guest checks out, they know, they come in, they clean it, it's ready to go. Everything's just booked, and roughly 8 minutes per guest is what it takes me now, or less, depending on the guest and how needy they are. But John is someone that you guys should really reach out to if you're interested in Airbnb, because he is someone I reach out to when it comes to time to talk about Airbnb, and you can see him here as STR_London. And yeah, the longer stays, the 14 plus days, is absolutely really, really wonderful. Mohammed, when it comes to cleaning, this is really something you talk about with your cleaner. Typically, what I'm seeing is $25 to $30 per hour, and that ranges change based on if they're doing, if they're bringing their own supplies, if they're bringing whatever, if they're doing the laundry, etc., etc. So, what I get charged for cleaning typically is about $25 an hour. I provide everything: the vacuum, the mop, the broom, the supplies, everything. It's all there in the unit. The cleaner does the laundry while they're here, and they typically take about 2 hours to do the clean. So what that looks like is roughly $60 an hour, or sorry, $60 per clean. But I charge $20 extra on that clean. So I charge $80 for the clean. The cleaner makes 60, and that other 20 goes towards all the other garbage that gets ruined, like towels and someone stealing toilet paper because of COVID and all this other bullshit. So yeah, $80 per clean is what I charge, and I pay 60 to the cleaner, and the 20 is just sort of a reserve fund for everything else. Yeah. Right now, minimum stays, I have like a week minimum stay, Sid. Before I had a 2-night minimum stay. Yeah. So that's sort of what that looks like. Feel free to reach out if you have any other questions about Airbnb. I've been doing it about a year now. I guess like May 1st or something like that. May 5th, I don't know, was my 1-year anniversary on Airbnb. I'm a superhost now. I've had like 50 stays, 60 stays, something like that, 5 stars, everything. But it's not hard to do if you actually give a shit and care about people. And just remember, before pivoting into this, you are a hotel manager. However, you don't have to live the hotel manager lifestyle where you're at the concierge desk 24/7, right? Like, technology really has a way of helping accelerate the tasks that need to get done without you doing all of it. So the highlights of doing Airbnb versus regular rentals. It's not actually a few $100s. I'll just point out it's about double the rent. So the upstairs is a 2-bedroom apartment, essentially. Typical rent for something like that in London, Ontario, in my area, is about $1,600 right now. I'll let you do the math real quick. On $80 a night times 30 nights, that's about $2,400. 80 times, yep, 30, because I don't have any vacancy right now. It's about $2,400 versus about 16. So not quite double, I should say that. Not even close to double. Fuck. Shit math. $2,400 is roughly what I'm making per month on that upstairs unit right now. That's not the highlight though. The highlight is you meet some really, really cool people. And maybe this isn't for you, and you don't have to, but I like to meet the people that stay for a little bit longer. Everyone has a really cool story. Typically, people that are staying longer have a pretty cool story. Like, for example, I had a couple come from Colombia. They're English teachers all over the world, and most recently they were in Colombia. And they brought this amazing Colombian coffee for me, and we went to the market every Saturday together and like just hung out and had a great time. So you meet some cool people. That was one of my favorite highlights was those guests. They were just absolutely wonderful. Yeah, so cleaning fees typically are about, remember that cleaning fees are charged on top of the nightly rate, right? So if I'm charging $80 per clean, like I'm making $20 roughly per, but that could be only $20 if they stay the entire month, right? So it's about $2,400 roughly is the income currently. How many vacant days did you have every month when you just started? When I first started, I was looking at roughly a 75% occupancy to 80% occupancy. So what that ended up meaning is like 8 to 10 vacant days. Let me just run that math real quick. 30 times 0.75. Yeah, it's about 8 to 10 at the most vacant days, and it was basically like a Tuesday to Thursday that was typically vacant. I never really had a vacant weekend. John mentioned it right there. That was the key part. You don't have tenants, you have guests, and goddamn, that is a huge difference. If you don't like your guests, they're only there for a short amount of time. If they don't like you, they can leave too. Everything is written out in the contract that you outline initially. So what this looks like, I had one. I know John had a couple parties. I had one issue basically in my entire time doing this, and it was a party that was thrown, and I literally just texted the guy and I said, "Hey, if you don't sort this out within the next 20 minutes, I'm calling the cops. You're getting kicked out and you're not getting your money back." And sure enough, within 20 minutes, everyone was gone. So STR_London is his Instagram handle, Ishan. Make sure you reach out to him. He is a wealth of knowledge, and he's flipped like 20 houses as well. So, you know, he really knows his shit. The difference, if you had a long-term rental and you had your, let's just say a student rental, and your students were throwing a party, and you tell them, get this party shut down, what are they going to say? What can you do? That's literally it. It sucks ass. So that's one of the huge benefits. And even so, at 20 days, let's just say you're at 20 days at $80 a night, which is roughly what I'm charging. That's market rent. So $1,600 is your 20 divided by 30. That's a 67% occupancy, or 33% vacancy, however you want to look at it. 33% vacancy is going to get you market rent at $80 a night. So maybe charge 82 and hope that you're not going to have 33% vacancy, which is extremely high in my experience. Yeah, give it a shot. What do you have to lose? Maybe a couple $1,000, whatever. You'll make it back. I also wanted to talk about what it sort of takes to set up an Airbnb, because a lot of people have asked about it. I know it's very enticing and sort of sexy. Pre-COVID, during COVID, everyone was shit-talking Airbnb. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. But the data does not show that short-term rentals, or sorry, I should say that. The data does not show that Airbnb was a bad platform to have during this period of time. The short-term rental market is dead, as far as I know. The medium to long-term rental market on these platforms is still very, very much alive. So I'm actually working with a partner right now to furnish their Airbnb and get it on the market. Basically like a Airbnb re-rental type of thing, just because their unit isn't legal. It doesn't have the head height to become legal, but it could be a really, really, really nice Airbnb once it's all said and done. Just before I move into that, I just want to address John's question here. He's asking mainly for the audience, because I know he knows this. Do you have more expenses other than hydro and internet? Yeah, so some of the expenses, I guess I can talk about that as I go through the furnishing and everything like that. So I'll just go through it. You're going to need a really nice bed. That is something you will want to spend money on. The bed frame, whatever. The mattress is sort of where it's at. If people love your cutlery and your plates and hate your bed, it doesn't fucking matter. They will have a shit stay at your place. You need a nice bed, a nice mattress. That is like, if you have $5,000, spend $1,000 alone on the bed. Like, that is gonna be key. The next thing is you want fast internet. Like, that is probably like the second most important thing in my opinion, because if they're not sleeping, they're probably on the internet in some capacity. And if you have slow shit internet, they're gonna hate your life, or hate their life, and in turn rate you absolutely low. Other expenses, the hydro, the water, the typical other stuff, that is typically covered by the owner. If you're doing a re-rental, if it's your unit and you're doing everything, so you're the owner and operator, obviously you have to pay those expenses as well. In terms of what I'm talking about right now, my primary residence is also my Airbnb and where I live. So I pay those delivery fees and the water and hydro or electricity, whatever, gas. I pay that regardless of if someone's upstairs or not. And also, unfortunately, whether or not I use anything. So when I was living abroad for work, I had absolutely zero usage on anything. I unplugged absolutely everything in the house. I turned off the gas. I turned off the water. I had nothing on for 3 months. And I still got charged delivery fees. I still got charged all of that garbage. And that sort of baseline's at about $100 in my market. So between $100 and $200 is basically my levels of what my energy costs use for electricity. My gas bill is charged equal billing constantly at about $50 a month, and that's my water, electricity, and gas right there. So when guests are in or when guests are not in, it really fluctuates between $150 to $200. It's almost irrelevant. What else were we talking about here? All right, so other furnishings you're going to need. Typical stuff like the coffee table or the dining room table, some chairs, a place to work, nice cutlery and plates, soaps that smell nice, some artwork here and there, comfy couch, TV. I have a whole list. If anyone's interested, you can just reach out to me. I'll email it to you or something. But basically, that list I just put together so that I can just hand that to someone and say, hey, can you get everything on this list? So it's as replicable and systematized as possible. Use stuff. If it looks good, go for it, man. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. Basically, the things that you want really, really nice are things that people are going to spend a lot of time touching. Don't be afraid to splurge on like a bottle of soap that smells amazing. That's really going to make their day when they wash their hands. Dave plunger is like the number one thing, right? So don't forget the toilet paper as well. Educating tenants on things in the area. Dave, can you clarify what you mean on that? Sid, are there any complications if you do Airbnb with your primary residence? I'm not sure what you mean by complications. It's actually, there's kind of a lot of benefits tax-wise, because I have a hotel basically above me, and that hotel has operating costs that I can write off. There are many advantages, and I can talk to you in detail about that. But one of the advantages is the internet that is required for the Airbnb I share, and that is now written off as an example. There are many others, but I don't think I see it as a complication. I see it as a very advantageous way to tax leverage yourself in a better way. How do you know the maximum to charge per night? This is actually a very complicated question when you think of it philosophically. How much are you worth? And just think about that for a sec. The partner who I'm working with right now, I was ready to help him for free to get his Airbnb set up and just to help him out. He's a great guy, and I was very ready to help, and he was not comfortable at all taking the service for free. So I had to think about this. How much am I worth? I don't know when it comes to this. How much is setting up an Airbnb worth to you? But that's something I'm still figuring out. But how do you know what the maximum to charge per night is? Charge as much as you possibly can, and if no one's biting, lower the price. That's how you find your market rate. I would not go too low, because then you start attracting the wrong clientele. And I've heard all sorts of horror stories where the Airbnb was essentially just being used as a place to house prostitutes and the marks coming through. So just be careful on your nightly rate. You do not want to go too low. I would rather sit a vacant unit than have one absolute trash guest come through. And actually, that's something that we didn't talk about before. was the other benefit of Airbnb was that you are protected in a much better way with insurance, with Airbnb sort of having your back as a super host or as a host. Where if a guest breaks something and you have proof that they broke it, so before and after pictures essentially, now that is covered by Airbnb, and you have a damage deposit and that's whatever else. Like we can talk a little bit more about this in detail if you'd like. Just shoot me a message. Do you educate tenants on restaurants or other fun, interesting things in the area? Dave, I know you know the answer to this. Thank you for asking, though. It's a great point. I love food. It's actually how Jeremy and I met, is through just bonding over food. And, Jeremy and I got to know each other as bonding over food. And I have created basically my favorite restaurants in the area for them to check out and sort of what they should get there. So I just have this like Excel file that I populate every now and then with here's some fun restaurants to check out if you're going on a date, or if you have a family, or if you just want to meet up with your friends. This place has a nice patio or whatever, this is the really cheap ones that are good quality. This is the really fancy ones if you want to impress someone, that type of stuff. So I just have a list and I provide that to my guests. They absolutely love it. Every now and then I go to our tourism London spot, and this is a fun little tip or trick for you guys. Go to your tourism place in your city. Every big city has one where they try to like show off the city in whatever way. Just go there. There's a shitload of pamphlets and coupons and like all these free things, and just go. I just take one of everything, and when the guest tells me about themselves in their intro, which is what I expect from every guest, then I leave out certain things that they might like. So for example, I had guests come in with 3 kids, a couple and 3 kids, and I left out some of the free coupons I got for like bowling and mini golf, and they absolutely freaking loved it. That was no cost to me at all, but it just took a little bit of thought. That's it. Other things that I like doing, and I know some guests leave, or some hosts leave their guests like bottles of wine or cheesecake or whatever. Like I did that at the start, but it's like I don't have time for that shit, and it's really not necessary to have a good experience for them. So what I do now is maybe smaller things if they're staying a little bit longer. So the guests that I had in for a month, they were in for a month basically to help their daughter prep for their wedding, or her wedding, and they just stayed for a month, sort of 15 days before the wedding, 15 days after type of thing. And I dropped off for them like a couple bottles of water with labels that said like hangover cure, and I got them some Gatorade and like other, it was like $5, maybe $7 worth of stuff, but they absolutely loved it. And it was just like the thought that counts, guys, in all of this, not the money that you spend. So insurance when it comes to Airbnb is actually very critical. You need primary residence insurance, or whatever. You need regular insurance on the property, and then you add in Airbnb insurance with your provider. So what that looks like for me is I'm with State Farm, or whatever they call themselves now. What do they call themselves? I don't even know. They changed their name. But they allows for short-term rentals for a certain period of time throughout the year. So I think it's like 180 days in a 360-day period, and then you have to pay a little bit more if it goes beyond that. And I'm more than happy to pay a little bit more, but the insurance company is not someone you want to screw around with, because if anything goes wrong, you're not insured, and that's fucking shit. So don't do that stuff. The insurance company is definitely not someone you want to screw around with. Yeah, that's pretty much, we talked a lot about Airbnb, and I know you guys have a lot of questions because the cash flow on it is very attractive. Feel free to hit me up. I'll answer as best as I can. Yeah, it's a good time. You meet some cool people, but remember that you're a hotel manager, right? So don't forget that part. All right. I rambled a lot here, so I'm trying to remember if I went on a tangent and forgot something else. What kind of wine, Quentin? It's a 2017 Carnivore Cabernet Sauvignon. And this is my favorite kind of wine, Cabernet Sauvignon. So if you have any recommendations, I'm very open to hearing it. Oh, I remember. I wanted to also talk about the location in the city for Airbnb. A lot of people wonder, like, what the heck? Why is the East End, or why would anyone rent in the East End in general? Like, the East End sort of has a stigma in London, Ontario. I live in the East End. I love it because it's cheap and you can still find nice houses here. Yeah, Shona, that Josh, or what were we drinking that one night? I can't remember what we had. I think it was Josh that we had, Shona. Yeah, and Marijuana Mondays on Matt's channel and Wine Wednesdays. I guess maybe Jeremy and I will switch to wine. We'll see. Usually we do beer cooler or something, but yeah, the location doesn't matter, guys. Like, one major tip: do not typically rent your Airbnb to people in town. Do not do that, because chances are they're just going to use your place as a party spot. Do not fucking do that. It'll screw you. Shona can't remember. It was Josh. I'm pretty sure it was Josh. That's a great Cabernet Sauvignon, and it's very affordable. Yeah, so people coming out of town, they don't necessarily know or care that East London is the shitty part of town, as long as it's close by to all the amenities that they need. Yeah, and I would argue that it's not really the shitty part of town. It's the best value to dollar part of town. But that's just me and how I think. So, don't worry about the location. Worry about the quality of what you're able to offer, and make sure that you're not in like a total war zone as well. Of course. The other thing, so you may have all seen the property that I renovated most recently, that I hold personally, not in a JV. And Todd and Shona actually did all the renos, or most of the renos on that property. And initially when I bought it, my plan was for it to become a 2-unit Airbnb. And I've had to pivot away from that because the main driver for the Airbnb there shut down for COVID stuff. So it was the Factory in London, Ontario, which is like the gigantic indoor recreational park, essentially, and it shut down. And that was, at that point, the main driver for that Airbnb in that location. There's almost nothing else in that area. So I pivoted to a long-term rental. And what that looks like for me today is a 2-bedroom upstairs unit that rents for about $1,600 roughly. And they pay electricity, and I pay for internet and water. And the downstairs unit pays $1,250, and it's the same internet, but I pay for internet and water there as well. So it's about a $2,850 a month gross income, and I just refinanced that at $400,000 with it. So that gives me a carrying cost of about, let's just say, $1,200 all in, maybe 13. My mortgage is pretty good on it, and yeah, some pretty good cash flow on that too, so can't complain. It could have been obviously more cash flow as an Airbnb, but whatever, it's okay. But the Airbnb decision is basically where I started choosing some of the fits and finishes. I ended up going for quartz countertops in that thing with a really nice kitchen, and some like nicer fits and finishes than I normally would do in a rental. But it was because of that Airbnb choice rather than the long-term rental. And then when I pivoted away, it was like, screw it, I'll just keep it. Why do I pay for internet, John? That's actually a great question. The reason I do that is because I have cameras on the outside, and I also run my wireless locks and my Nest thermostat all off that internet. So by paying for the internet, which helps me keep the security and safety of the property, it allows me to keep an eye basically on the property, make sure everything's okay. And the tenants know that. They're very happy to have that camera system in, and the locks, because I don't charge them key deposit. They don't have keys, etc. So they're very happy to pay the $50 each basically per month for internet. And I pay $36 per month from Fido for that internet, and it's 150 megabits per second download speed, 10 megabytes per second upload speed internet. So it's about a 70 or so, or 60 or so dollar per month profit on the internet. That's why I pay for it. It just allows me to maintain a little bit of security on the property. If there are no further questions, guys, I'm going to finish this glass of wine, and we'll call it a night. I'll save this on my my feed as well, so that it's there for reference later on, but feel free to shoot me a message. Make sure you shoot John a message if you have questions about Airbnb. He's a wealth of knowledge. And thanks for joining, guys. Have a good one.